I want to bring in political analyst Brian Sobel. Brian, thanks so much for being with us here on Live Now from Fox. Let's start with the very basics. This Secret Service protection, this detail that the former vice president had in case has now been revoked by President Trump. Can you sort of explain how this typically works when an administration leaves office and a new administration enters?
Well, the guidelines, Christina, are clear that the vice president receives 6 months of additional protection by the Secret Service when they leave office. Now, the President of the United States, as we know, receives lifetime protection, and that has been the case for many years. In fact, if you go back into history, only one president after he left office did not take a Secret Service detail with him, and that was Richard Milhouse Nixon. So all of the presidents that have served, they all get lifetime protection, but vice presidents get limited protection. And so Joe Biden extended Kamala Harris's protection beyond the Secret Service guidelines.
And so, Brian, has this ever happened anywhere else in time historically where that has been an extension there for a vice president?
I don't believe so. Maybe a viewer would correct me, but this is standard operating procedure. The Secret Service, as a department of the federal government, has certain resources for protection of public people. And when you just casually look at how much protection is around the protectees, that's what they call it, you see that it is vast and very, very expensive. And one might say, as Kamala Harris begins a book tour that includes a couple of international locations, I believe London and Toronto, the American taxpayer would have provided protection for her through her entire book tour and in various places, and not be reimbursed a dime. So I think it's just a thing where if the book publisher wants to provide her protection as she travels to all these places, touting her own book where she is going to make money from the book, so be it. But I think a lot of American taxpayers would say, hey, stick with the guidelines. 6 months have elapsed. It's time to go back to being a regular citizen, which is at the crux of all of this. Whether you're Mike Pence or you're Dan Quayle or you're anybody that has ever served as vice president, and Kamala Harris, the presumption, even for president, is when you're done with your time in office, you go back to being a regular citizen. It's one of the linchpins of our democracy and our republic.
And so I do want to put this up on the screen for everyone at home as well. We do have this reaction from some of the other Democrats, including House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, saying the Trump administration canceled the Secret Service protection for Vice President Kamala Harris. Why would they do such a reckless thing? Republicans are psychotically consumed by revenge. These extremists are unfit to govern and dangerous to the American way of life. But it sounds like, Brian, you're saying this has been pretty standard. So with this extension being put in place, I have to ask you, is this setting a new precedent? But why are Democrats acting and responding so loudly to this if this has been the way of life for many years after an administration leaves office?
It sort of seems, Christina, to be what is going on these days, that instead of putting forward new ideas and new proposals of one stripe or another, or new people, Dems are reacting to all of these things with vitriol and trying to blame Republicans and the president for seeking revenge. This one, well, politics are politics. This one makes perfect sense to me. You cannot provide this extra layer of protection for all these people who leave office. It just doesn't make sense. If they want to hire private security, which many of them do, especially when they go to special events, I see it all the time, by the way, so be it. But expecting the American taxpayer to protect people beyond the standard amounts of time that have been prescribed is just a gift of American taxpayer money. And that's what Joe Biden did by extending Kamala Harris's protection. And I think the Secret Service probably made a recommendation to the president that said, hey, this is going to be precedent setting if you don't truncate this. And that's what happened.
All right, I have to ask you, Brian, as we're talking about the former vice president, there's been a lot of speculation as to what comes next for Kamala Harris. We do know that just a little while ago, it was thrown around the conversation of whether or not she might run for governor of California. She's since put all of that to rest. But what do you expect for us to see from Kamala as she now embarks on this book tour? But after that, could we be looking out for her in 2028?
I think she has to look at whether she has some cachet for 2028, but her fellow Californian, Gavin Newsom, certainly has his eyes on 2028, and they've never disagreed on who ought to run for what. So I think it'll be a momentum thing, but frankly, like a lot of former politicians, and now Kamala Harris is one of those, they have to go into what is known in the political world as going into the wilderness and thinking about what their future is. And it may not be president. It may be a president of a university, or it may be president of a think tank, or it may be lots of other things, but it isn't necessarily a political future. And so we won't know much about where Kamala Harris's thinking is for a while yet. But she is still a player in the national discussion. But because of her campaign, 107 days, $1 billion spent, and losing to Donald Trump, it put a big ding in her armor. And so she's got to recover from that.
And lastly, before I let you go, Brian, you did mention yet another name that has been floated around there for the Democratic Party looking ahead to 2028. You said Gavin Newsom's name. Of course, he's the current governor of California. Anyone else on either side, Republican, Democrat, or maybe somewhere in between as an independent, that we should kind of have our eyes looking out for as we head into now the midterms, but after that, looking ahead to 2028, when the seat there in Washington, D.C. as the president and commander-in-chief becomes available once again?
I think, well, there are a number of names being floated, but I think Gavin Newsom has jumped out in front on the Democrat side of the aisle. But the real challenge, frankly, is who's going to run for president on the Republican side. All of the Democrat rock throwing at the president is sort of missing the mark because he isn't going to be president after this term ends, and it's going to be somebody else. And whether that's J.D. Vance stepping up, or any of the other Republicans who we saw in the last go-around stepping up. You could see a DeSantis. You could see a lot of people taking a look at this race. Even Marco Rubio, who I think has done a very good job as Secretary of State, he could be in the mix. So I think there's all these names out there, but it's early. And the key thing to watch, Christina, and I would say to the viewers, is what happens in the midterms in 26. If there's a continuing mandate for Donald Trump and what he's doing, as evidenced by sending members of Congress back to Congress with a majority of Republicans, then I think the Republicans have a real opportunity to do well in 28 as the presidential election comes around. If they don't do well in the midterms, I think the Democrats can seize some momentum and put up a couple of candidates, more than one, for America to discuss and decide on one.
And it'll certainly be interesting. And Brian, it seems like we were just talking about this current election that happened just last year in 2024 for so many months and weeks. But you know that, as always, our eyes are to the future. But we appreciate you for helping us here on Live Now from Fox on this Saturday. Break down one of the latest headlines coming out of Washington, D.C. As always.